So, I want to speak more about reasoning and why I think you should abandon reasoning while you imagine. Because it is my opinion that reason is coming from the sense man. It's really your own voice. The voice that puts you in bondage is the same voice that frees you. But at times we listen to the voice of reason, which puts us in bondage. But reason itself comes from fear. It comes from limitation. It's not necessarily, it's a construct that was created by yourself from the external. Because reason will ask you, well, when will this happen? How will it happen? But these questions don't exist in imagination. In imagination, things already are. They are already happening. It already is so. And I know you're capable of imagining what you want. I know you're capable of seeing what you want. I know you're capable of hearing what you want. You can imagine anything you like, but that's not the problem. The question is, do you believe in it? Do you believe in what you're hearing and what you're seeing? Do you believe in what you're imagining? That's the question. And in order to yield or to surrender into a dream, one must abandon reasoning. Neville would say this, that when he would feel restrictions and pressures within himself, he found that was the best time to assume that he is who he wants to be. It's his best time to imagine himself being what he wants to be. And he said he would die to himself and then yield into what is only a dream. He would go mad and yield. Now, the going mad part is removing reason, because reason will tell me this is just a dream. Your senses don't show you this. This is just all in imagination. It's just fake. It's fiction. And what Neville's trying to tell us is that it's the reverse. That things come from imagination here. That the things you're seeing came from imagination as well. And if you can, the way to practice abandoning your reasoning is to bring things to the present moment. He says to immerse yourself in the wish fulfilled, but in order to truly immerse yourself, you must abandon the idea. I can explain, I guess. Let me explain an example. Suppose you wanted to assume that you're, let's just say, it doesn't matter. Let's just say brilliant. You want to assume that you're brilliant. And then you go to assume this, and a few things happen. Either your past is brought up showing you how you're not brilliant, or your fears of the future start coming up. That what if you were brilliant and things went wrong? Or what if you actually won't become it? Or any question that comes in the way, like how would you even become brilliant? When would you become brilliant? All of these questions are stemming from fear. They're from reason. And you can't bring those into the present moment. You can't successfully enter into imagination by holding on to your external reality. You must let go of the external reality. Because imagination, everything's happening in the present moment. Everything already is happening. You already are it in the mind. The question is, are you going to allow yourself to believe in that? It's not a matter of how you're going to get there. You are already there in imagination. Can you go mad and abandon your reasoning and yield and surrender into it, even though it's just a dream? Because in reality, you actually already grant reality to imaginal acts all the time. You credit them reality. You're the creditor of reality. You can take a fearful thought and you can credit it reality. And the next thing you know, you start feeling fear from it because you're dreaming up a nightmare and you're believing in that nightmare as if it's the only reality. And it scares you. And then either you try to fight your way out of it, not realizing that the same voice that puts you into that nightmare is the same voice that frees you. There's not another savior. The savior's within. I think a common experience with this is that, from my experience, that I would think the thoughts I do not want, and then I would abandon my reasoning and let those thoughts make me afraid. Then I would think about thoughts I do want, and I would let my reasoning stop me. And this was the war that's really within a lot of us, is the war of reason, is that we allow the limitations in the mind to convince us that we're limited in imagination, when that doesn't make sense, because you can conjure up anything in imagination. And the voice that is keeping you in bondage in imagination is the same one that can free you in imagination. Because the question is this: I know you can sit there and say, I am freed from this problem in my life. Are you going to believe that? It doesn't really matter if you repeat it with your outer lips. As Neville would say, many people would imagine, I am rich, I am rich, I am rich. They would say this over and over again. But in the depths of their being, they would feel, when is the next dollar going to come? So they would worry about money, even though they're speaking with their lips that they're rich. It's not about what you say with your outer lips, but the ones you say within. It's the words. Which lips are you going to allow dictate your life? The ones on the external, the ones internal. The ones internal, those lips can say anything. Those ears can hear anything. Those eyes can see anything. And if you hold on to your reasoning, you will find yourself becoming frustrated, because on the one level you want to grant yourself this desire, but on another level you feel that you must obey reason. And these two can't go together, because reasoning tells you you're not that, while imagination tells you you are that. Who are you going to believe? It's just yourself in the end, but you, in some sense, you kind of believed in an illusion of separation, so you feel like you have the separation within you. And what eventually has to happen is that the external man has to die. He has to wither away. And all that's left is the internal man who lives in imagination. But reason is something that makes you wonder. It's like a wondering type of thinking. It's maybe you assume that you are something, but then you start worrying, what actions are you going to take after you imagine? All of these things that pertain to the external comes from this reasoning, and it's not allowing you to actually experience in imagination your desire. You're really not allowing yourself to just be in imagination. Because remember, things already are. You don't necessarily have to create anything in imagination. It already is. So what you need to learn to do is to immerse yourself in imagination as if it's the only reality, no matter what it is, because that's the only thing stopping you from actually changing your I am. Because to assume in the feeling of I hope I will be, like you're saying I am brilliant, but deep down you're feeling I hope I'm brilliant, I hope I can be. To assume in the feeling of I will is to give birth to fears, and this is not even natural. It doesn't feel natural to assume in the I will be's. It is only natural to assume in the I am, for there is nothing being expressed but I am. Now, as I said before, from us life comes. So from the I am, from what I am, life is formed. So all I must do is change my I am. What is my I am? What am I aware of being currently? That's my I am. Now you might want to assume that you're an author, but you feel like you haven't written a book yet. So how can I assume this? Well, abandon your reasoning that you haven't written a book. Abandon. Now you can just apply this to anything. I'm just using author because it came to my mind. But you abandon the idea that you're not an author, that you haven't written a book. All of that reasoning needs to go. And what you do is you assume that I am an author, and you feel that you are that now. Because you already are it in imagination. And then this is what shapes your I am. And from this, the world starts to reshuffle, because it's coming, the world's reflecting I am. It's responding to I am. So if you don't have to be afraid to assume you are something. It doesn't really matter what it is. All that matters is, are you going to allow your reasoning to dictate your limitation? Are you allow it to restrict you from expanding? That's the question. And, this idea that, I don't think it sounds as bad as Neville said, that he goes mad and, he surrenders into what is only a dream. he sparks reality into it. He believes in the reality of what he's looking at. He believes reality into it. And he said something really important in the lecture, There Is No Fiction. And he says this: point yourself towards the wish fulfilled and accept that invisible state as reality. Then go your way knowing the desire is yours now. You did it, and you will not be surprised when it comes to pass. So he says to accept the invisible state as reality. Now, you can use state, but I can also accept the invisible ears and what they're hearing. Accept the invisible eyes and what they're seeing. Accept this invisible dream as reality. And bring it to the present moment. And you don't need to be afraid. Actually, all your fears will melt because there is no fear in the present of being it. There can't be a fear. How could there be any fear? In order for there to be fear, you'd have to conjure it up. And fear comes from reason, so if you abandon your reason, you won't be afraid to be in it. A common experience I had was I would imagine myself to be something, and then I would become afraid as to what actions I should take, because I didn't trust myself and the actions that I could take. I wondered if I was smart enough, or if I was this enough or that enough. But that's not, as Neville says, that's not the righteousness by which you die to your sins. I was still living in sin. I would assume that I am something, but then 5 minutes later I would reject it in some sense. I wouldn't actually believe in the words I'm saying within myself. And then it wasn't until I saw that those words are the same ones that I believe in to condemn me, is the same voice that I could believe in to accept my desires, to free me. But I misuse this power. I only use it in one way, which is to conjure up fears. And if you know that if you are conjuring up fears, you must see that, you don't be ashamed of what you created. You may have created like a nightmare, but what you need to do is wake up and see who the dreamer is. I mentioned before that I had a nightmare the other day, and I woke up and found out that nightmare was happening within me. I was the dreamer all along. It felt real, but once I saw that it was me who was doing it, me the dreamer, no matter what I've created, I can change it. It's always my dream. So, and I want to stress this point, is you need to assume, you will not be committed to assuming you are something if you don't love it. And you only love it if it's really your own desire. If you start to imagine for other people, in the sense that, like, you're saying, well, I want to be brilliant so that I can finally feel accepted by people. If you're imagining for others in that sense, you're still not getting it. You won't be committed to that because that's not the end. Neville says to go to the end. The end is not to imagine having money so you can be respected. No, it's if that's the goal, then feel respected. Go to the end. Always go to the end. Common one is people wanting to go to the lottery to get wealthy. They're still working on the means. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just better to go to the end, which is feeling after wealth. That yourself to be that. Now. You don't think about the lottery and try to, work your way around it. It's a very common mistake. That's why Neville says don't focus on things. Focus on being the one who is. You don't focus on what you need to do to become brilliant. You assume you are it now. And then that will express naturally into your world. Because the world's reflecting or responding to I am. But if you're not assuming in the I am, you will never express it. Because you're not believing in it. As a present fact now, you are reasoning your way out of it. You are using reason to create the feeling of, I hope I can be this one day. It doesn't matter what the world's showing you. I don't care if someone told you yesterday that you could never do what you think you could do. Just ignore them. It's yourself anyways. It's just expressing your own doubt. And if you believed in yourself, guess what? If you believed in it, you would express it, and then they would have to conform to seeing you that way. So, don't be concerned with what people are saying in the world or where you're physically at. These aren't the problems. Remember what Neville said, that it was when he became aware of his restrictions and pressures, he would die and yield to what is only a dream. He would go mad and surrender to what is only a dream. And he would believe in that to be the reality. He realized that desires, which are restrictions and limitations, are within him. They're not external. They're not outside of him. And when he was able to see that, he was able to start freeing himself the way he wanted to be freed for himself. So I don't wonder if, like, is it selfish for me to assume that I am this? Or is it wrong? Or is it, will I be accepted? Or all these, this is all reasoning. I just remove all of that. I simply just, as Neville says, dare to assume that an assumption is what I am now, not something I'm going to be. But you can't get there with reasoning, because reasoning tells you you're not that. Reasoning tells you, puts doubt into you that you could ever become it. But life's responding to I am. And if I know that's the cause, then I know what to change. Well, what is I am? Well, like I said, it's what I'm aware of being in the present moment. So I speak about this because I find that reasoning is, what reasoning does is it creates, it really conditions your desires. It places all these conditions upon it that, well, you have to have this first or that qualification to assume this, to assume that. But in imagination, you don't even need money. You don't need qualifications. You don't need anything. Your needs are all, you can walk around in your imagination just as though all your needs are met. You're allowed to do that. And the question you must ask yourself is, when you enter an imagination, who am I in here? Am I simply a little being who's desiring everything, begging for other people not to hurt me? Or am I assuming that I am what I want to be? Am I acting like a god in here? Am I acting like all my needs are met? You know, who am I really in this world? Are things really responding to me? And you'll see that the moment you assume in the I am, your imagination starts to shift, reshuffle itself. And that is the reshuffling that will happen in your external world. And I don't mean magic. I don't mean that you're going to open your eyes, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but I haven't had that experience. My experience has been very much where I assume that I am it. It completely removes all barriers in my mind. I feel euphoria. I feel free. And then I find naturally my world starts to, my conversations with people change in the nature of what I've shifted to. People enter my life who weren't there before to aid me on the, or not just aid me, really just to keep reflecting what I am. And I've also noticed that if I go back to old states, people from the past in those old states will come into my life again. And I'll bump into them at places. And so it really is all you. And you should have a lot of safety in that. Because there's no one you're doubting but yourself, and there's no one else you're going to trust but yourself. So, and when you realize that, like, there's nothing to do other than to assume in the I am, because that's all that's expressing, I think you'll feel a large amount of relief, because a common problem is like, well, what do I do after? Neville says, do nothing. The whole point is to admit you can't do anything. The outer man can't do it. That's why we're imagining. We allow the outer man to just, I guess, be limited. The outer man wants to expand himself. Really, it's the inner you that wants to expand themselves in imagination. But you can't bring your reasoning with you, because it just creates walls and barriers. And I think that it's important to, if you have a problem with assuming in the I am because you're worried about what others will think of you, or what will happen next, or what you're going to do next, or if you're really allowed to do it, or any of those things, you have to start living in imagination, because that's where you're safe. In imagination, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks in imagination or what they say, because they're just responding to you. You don't have to fear anyone. It doesn't matter what anyone's going to do, because they can't do anything without your permission. And you don't assume you are something so that hopefully somebody can reflect that. No, you assume you are it, and you make them see you that way. You make everyone in your mind see you the way you want to be seen. Doesn't matter who they are. They must conform to your orders. So you don't need to be afraid of anything. You need to learn to accept the love that comes from you in imagination. Not be afraid of it. And some of the greatest news I've heard was that, in the beginning of this journey, was that I was the dreamer of my nightmares. I accepted that I created everything that was a nightmare in my life. When I was able to accept that, I didn't reason my way into it. I didn't say, well, is it really? How could I be if I was a child? I just accept it. And from there, I was able to accept many other things for myself. Because if I'm the cause of my nightmare, I'm the cause of, my wonderful dreams. And it doesn't matter what the world says, it's just responding. The world must respond to my I am. It does not matter what on earth you assume. It must respond. And it won't shock you because you're so used to assuming in the I am. The I am requires you to abandon your reasoning, yes, but you'll get used to that if you practice this. And the way you practice this, as we'll go back to the I am brilliant, you assume I am brilliant, not as something you're going to be, not as something you have to physically do anything for. You don't do anything. You you make the inner man brilliant. You make the inner man feel brilliant. It's the inner man who needs to be exalted. That's the one who's desiring. That's the one who's afraid. That's the one who is in bondage. That's the one who wants to be X, Y, and Z. And all things already are. So what you need to do is find the dream that already is the way you want it to be. And you feel in the present moment that is real now. And you abandon all reason. And what you'll find is that the greatest thing you can do in imagination is to abandon reason, and you'll find that everything already is. And since everything already is, there's nothing you need to do but assume. And if you can see that you're the same voice that was kept you in bondage, the same one that frees you, the same I am that was the problem is now the solution. The same one that creates you're the dreamer of the nightmare. Then you can be free in your own mind. If you assume you're the cause of it all. And fall asleep feeling that you found the cause of life. Just assume it. Don't reason with it. And what you'll find is not reasoning your way into things is, or as Neville says, going mad, is a way to make a dream into a reality. It's being bold enough and daring to assume that you are, even though your reason denies it, even though all your senses deny it, you assume you are, regardless. Not as something you're going to be tomorrow, but as something you are now. That's how I meditate. That's what I do. And what I've found is that it works. It really does work. If you know the whole thing's responding to you, you don't need to be afraid.